Leslie had to turn the mic on, please.
Yeah.
Got it.
Ready when you are.
Good evening. Welcome to the April 23rd, 2025 meeting of the Town of Southampton Conservation Board. The board's meetings continue to be hybrid, which means they are both in person at Town Hall and via video conference through Zoom webinar. If you go to the town website and click on the town clerk's agendas and meetings portal, you can watch the live stream video of the meeting, and there is a link to submit written comments for the public record. You can also join Zoom webinar through the town clerk's portal. If you are attending via Zoom and wish to speak during the meeting, then please alert our moderator by clicking the raise hand icon or type in the chat box. Thank you. I invite all to rise for the salute to the flag.
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
A special welcome to Leslie, our new member. Thank you for being here.
Very happy to be here. Thank you for welcoming me.
Minutes of March 26, 2025.
I don't know if this style is good.
We have the people to, well, we have a full board, so we can do that. Is there a motion? What's your pleasure?
Motion to accept.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? And what's your pleasure on the minutes of April 9th, 2025?
Motion to accept is presented.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Public hearings,
I wasn't here.
I also wasn't here.
I abstained from both of those.
Public hearings, A021076, Nicholas Christopher and Pamela Christopher, and the applicant requests an adjournment to July 23rd, 2025. Is there anyone in the public who would like to speak on this application, or is there anyone on Zoom? There being none, is there a motion to adjourn to July 25th, 2025?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? A024065, 191 Highland LLC. And we have, as has been the custom, Zeb will recuse himself on this application.
The new submission already stamped in, or?
Yes,
That's it right there.
Okay,
That's,
so we need to hand it.
yes.
Yeah, which,
Are these,
you are set.
Is each one of these one set?
Drawings that are on the wall.
is this one
Each of
set,
those
or
one
is it
set
two
with the binder
sets?
clip?
That's, yeah. One whole
This
set.
is one set?
Each binder clip is one set.
And we charge extra if it's too much reading.
Michael Shiano for InterScience Research Associates on behalf of the applicant. We also have John Bennett, the owner's attorney and counsel, Chris LaGuardia from LaGuardia Design, John Letterman from DeLandre Andrews, Cassidy Walsh from InterScience as well, and both of the owners are also here.
How are you?
So there were a number of items that the board had requested at the last meeting, and also some items that Marty Shea had requested in his preliminary advisory report that we have addressed. So I'm just going to go through those. At the most important one, I believe, is you had requested that we reduce the fill on the water side of the swimming pool. We have done that. which has reduced the amount of fill within the 200-foot setback by 637 cubic yards, so reduced from 1,591 cubic yards to 954 cubic yards, which is a reduction of about 40% from what we originally proposed. This is about a third of what was approved on the neighboring property to the north, and it is less, I don't have the number in front of me, I'm sorry, but it is less than what was approved on the property to the south as well. There were some concerns that the board had regarding whether the fill would have an impact on neighboring structures and the wetland areas. So we had requested that PW Grosser Consulting provide us with input to that regard. And in your package, we have included a letter from them where they assessed the alternative fill design. And they were able to conclude that it will not have an impact on the neighboring structures, nor on the wetlands, nor on the wetlands buffer itself. Brian from PW Grosser Consulting, I forgot to mention it, is also on Zoom to answer any questions that the board may have to that regard as well. You had asked us to remove the dry wells on the eastern side of the swimming pool. There was a line of them here, and to try and move them as far away from the wetlands as possible. We have completely removed any drainage structures from the eastern side of the swimming pool, and LaGuardia Design and DeLandro Andrews worked together to try and push everything as far as possible, but there were some limiting factors. So we weren't able to meet the request of getting it to 150 feet from wetlands, but everything is more than 125 feet from wetlands. And some of those limiting factors included the distance that leaders from gutters have to travel. So they're still fed by gravity, so they had to be at least close enough to parts of the house to collect that runoff. The location of some proposed trees on this side meant that we couldn't kind of fill up this area with drainage structures. There's an area of the house, an area of the property here where it's kind of like the spillway that we have to keep clear for when there's a flood, that those are where the flood vents are. So there has to be an area where the water will come in and out there. In addition to those three things, there were also some revisions to the plan that we made based on some comments that we received from the property to the north. The neighbor to the north asked that the generator be relocated. It was previously closer to their property. They asked us to move it, so we moved it from here to this side of the property. It's more than 200 feet away from the wetlands now, as is the LP gas tank that's underground on that side. So because those are over there, that also kind of affected how far back we could move underground structures on that side. If you have any other questions about that after I go through, there are people here to answer that. Chairman, you had asked us to look into the shoreline and the topography that was on, I don't have the survey here, but you had pointed out that the shoreline kind of curved up here, and that it looked like that the topographic contours were all pointing at the shoreline. So I spoke with Zaskis, David Zaskis, and he identified that he believes that his field crew made a mistake in interpreting where the shoreline was. So he has adjusted that to suit. Regarding the topographic contours, he believes that in this part of the property and also onto the neighboring property that there's a steep fall off. So eventually all of these contours are going to kind of run parallel to each other. He just didn't have enough spot elevations in order to draw that properly. So, and also he was not able to update that because he's several months out in terms of field work, but he said that based on what he knows of this area, that is what the case was. So eventually these contours all kind of run, and then there's kind of a steep drop off over here. So while they look here that they point at the shoreline, that's not what the actual case is. Marty had requested in his February 11th, 2025 preliminary advisory report that the 100-foot non-disturbance non-fertilization buffer from the subdivision be added to the plan. We have done that. We have also updated the limit of clearing to match what that 100-foot buffer is. There were also some additional updates to the plantings based on, we were able to locate an updated existing limit of clearing. Marty had identified in his field inspection that the area about 70 feet away from the wetlands had been left to regrow naturally since the original survey had been done. So Saskis was able to previously provide an updated limit of clearing, so we've updated the planting plan and those plans to suit. We weren't able to update the site plan survey in time for this meeting, but we will provide that, assuming that this is all good. But the limit of clearing, the updated shoreline, and the updated buffer from Saskis's plan, those we were able to get onto all of these plans, so those are all accurate. We just weren't able to get the proposed stuff back onto Saskis's work because he was off last week, so we couldn't get that done. So all of the items that the board had requested at the last meeting we were able to address, and we were also able to address items that Marty had requested. We are here to answer any questions that you may have, including if you have any questions about the report that PW Grosser had prepared. So that's it.
Did you look into the alternative not septic, but drainage structures that Marty spoke about at the last meeting?
We did.
The Coltec, the plastic dome?
Yes, we did. Do you guys want to address that?
Didn't work with the program, and we thought we made more than adequate.
You have to go to the podium.
It didn't work with the program, and it didn't work with the benefit that the client seeks to obtain here, and quite candidly, we thought we had made very substantial concessions. Remember the approval that you gave to 194 Highland Terrace? We're now 2,585 cubic yards below that. And the approval that you gave to 167 Highland Terrace, we're now 637 cubic yards below that. So we think we've gone an enormous way here. We're asking for less than, much less than this board, without any change in law and without any significant change in membership, has given in the past. We also have from PW Grosser, as you know, are not only consulting engineers but hydrologists, demonstrated that Marty's concerns about impact on the wetlands and the structures are not an issue at all. And again, this is totally within your 200 feet jurisdiction. I don't see any regulation of fill specifically required in that area. The board had never, until recently, decided that they had the power to do that, but in an attempt to be accommodative, we have come a very, very long way. So no, it wasn't something that made sense in terms of programmatically for the benefit that the client wants in this instance. There doesn't seem to be anything in the methodology for construction or anything of the improvements that are going to happen on this property that has any nexus to the regulatory concerns that you would have. So given this very, very substantial reduction from the last time, somewhere between 40 and 50%, we thought we would be, quite candidly, thanked for our efforts and be able to move on. I don't know what else to say. I'm rather surprised that these significant modifications, I mean, I would just hope that they would be well met by the board. We haven't stonewalled the board. We've come in here, we've tried to work with the board. The concerns were impact on wetlands and impact on surrounding structures, and we've demonstrated by the significant reduction of fill, proved by expert testimony, that there's not going to have any impact on the things that you regulate and the things that the reasons why the town passed the wetlands law. So no, it doesn't work with programmatically, and we didn't see that it would be a substantial advantage, particularly as it relates to the fact that we're not impacting negatively any of the things that that you folks regulate. Does anybody have anything else to add on that?
I could add something about Coltech.
Yeah, sure. I think that would be helpful. Yeah, well, like perhaps we should.
Okay. Chris LaGuardia, landscape architect, Watermill, New York. So I know the Coltech system well, and I also know how dry wells work. The Coltech system requires a lot of area, a lot of square feet. And what it does, it impacts the landscape, okay, what the things that I do, because you need to spread out the cells, and then you have to fill it with gravel. And it just destroys the soil horizon that you're trying to maintain, because it divorces the topsoil from the next layer down. So it's just a real negative to what their future landscape will be, because for the little bit that it's going to save in terms of height, it's almost negligible to use Coltech. It has a negative effect on the landscape. So why impose this on the owners to not be able to plant trees in other places of their property with this giant gravel beds all over the place? It's just, I don't see the benefit of it at all. So, and they really don't work that well regardless, because the gravel silts up, and it's just, we're better off with dry wells and leaving larger areas of open soil with a full horizon rather than these giant gravel beds. I mean, the Coltech is mainly used for parking lots, okay? Big parking lots. And it's you're not good for lawns. It just creates a real shallow soil horizon. You farm, you know. And so we decided against it. It's just a real negative to the site, as far as I'm concerned, compared to the dry wells.
Question. I hear what you say. I'm trying to understand the difference of the finished product with a concrete structure for drainage, the standard concrete rings, and the Coltech, and how those differences pan out to be what you're saying when the drainage structure, the concrete drainage structure, is a ring in the ground, which is going to prevent tree roots from going there. You can't plant a tree there. It's also going to have a cover, and that's where, and the reason for Marty's asking, I believe, was because the Coltech doesn't need that cover, and you don't need that extra foot above it of fill. Both require similar square footage for drainage. Gravel can be used. It doesn't have to be used according to their website. The important thing is that there be a firm base. Around here and around there, there is a good sand base, with firm base. Now, don't get me wrong, I'm not saying you need to use that, but I had never heard of negatives of the Coltech system. And I'm interested in learning more about that, because if we're going to recommend exploring that, our assumption is it's better. But if it's not better, I need to understand why.
But it's negligible in terms of its benefit. We're already using a shallow pool system, okay?
Those
so
are
the difference is maybe like 6 inches. So, and in the same breath, you're destroying a soil horizon by spreading massive amounts of gravel, where instead you'd have a ring here and a ring there. You know what I mean? It's just not the way you want to build a landscape, is on top of a foot of soil on top of a bed of gravel. That's, you'd rather have, you know, full depth down to sand, clay, topsoil. So
The applications that I've seen have primarily been in parking lots. For example, the Southampton Yacht Club, which I'm a proud member, the parking lot is covered by a Coltech system. But we would never have done that on the seaward side of the yacht club, because all of a sudden you have this massive lateral expanse.
can't plant trees on it. The landowners, they're engineers. They have the technical data that maybe look for.
Yeah, John Letterman from Delaney Rangers. I mean, just to speak to your point and Chris's point, Typically the Coltex systems are laid out in, large fields that utilize about 8 inches of gravel below. That gravel space is typically what contributes to a lot of the storage volume of the system. So, where Chris is trying to plant, trees and create an aesthetic value to, part of the property, that, becomes problematic when a large swath of property is covered with, a gravel bed. So it can be utilized without it, but that also impacts its storage volume. And, as you guys commented last time, that there is a large amount of dry wells being proposed already. I mean, what you can imagine with a system that carries less volume, you're going to need more square footage. So what you already see would be impacted further by additional drainage. So that would be one of the reasons why it would start to impact the vegetation and Chris's schedule. So.
Thank you.
Because we haven't proposed that much more impervious surface. So we have actually has less room to work with driveways.
Any more testimony initially? Thank you. Morning.
Good evening, Marty Schiff, Chief Environmental Analyst for the town. The project modifications, namely elimination of the planned excessive amounts of fill on the east side or the pond side of the proposed pool and patio area. While commendable, that's being dictated by the boundaries of the planning board required conservation easement on this property. As was alluded to early on in my advisory report, I indicated that it was most critical that we show the easement boundaries because it had appeared to me that the subdivision easement boundaries may extend further landward than the minimum required 100-foot natural buffer landward of my wetland line. And just to show you where the easement boundaries come in, it's this dashed line here. You see it on some of the other plans. It's overlaid on the second plan here. It's on an angled line that comes within very close proximity to the planned and pool patio. So number one, the final overlay of those easement boundaries prevented the applicant from proceeding with the plans to place large mounds of fill in the fashion that was previously offered at the first hearing. While at first glance, when you look at the plans, it looks like the fill deposition that would occur largely on the south side of the pool and patio, and perhaps around the immediate periphery of the pool house, and further back where the main residences planned. The applicant is actually seeking your approval to place an extensive amount of fill to raise the elevation of the pool and patio. That doesn't jump out at you on a lot of these plans because the applicant has failed to show the proposed modified grades under those accessory improvements, where it becomes quite obvious that the applicant is looking to yet elevate the entirety of this area with up to 3 feet of fill, is when you look at the required cross view construction plan for the swimming pool and patio area. You're seeing this significant layer or amount of fill that would be placed in order to raise up the grade for that pool terrace. The and, as well spoken to at the first public hearing on this application, virtually the entirety of this property is within a floodplain. So again, what's concerned with placing inordinate amounts of fill in this area? Anytime you put significant amounts of fill and you change the grades, you're interfering with the natural flooding and drainage processes. You're also increasing the risk of runoff of lawn fertilizers and chemicals. Those results are of concern because notwithstanding a history of permitted fill on other properties in this area, what we have since learned in recent years is that the rise in sea level is anticipated to quicken and occur a lot faster than previously predicted. We also are now aware that Sag Pond is suffering from degraded water quality. So what that means is that we have to be even more vigilant now when we look at project plans in the floodplain for Sag Pond and do everything possible to limit the amount of fill in the floodplain. When you place fill, again, in a floodplain, what it does is it displaces those floodwaters when they come in to other lower lying properties. It is for that reason that it's commonplace for these types of sites that I look to have the artificial fill, whether that's reuse of excavated material or imported fill, reserved as much as possible to the sanitary system when required by the health department, and that it not be used for the purposes of accessory improvements. Typically, what I ask for is that improvements, whether they be decks, patios, or pools, that they be structurally elevated so that we're not having to place fill for that reason. The residence itself, which is quite large in that it would offer a total living area of in excess of 16,000 square feet. That residence is situated further back, and a large part of that residence is actually likely outside of 200 feet, which is the limit of this board's wetland permitting authority. So notwithstanding that, I typically recommend in these situations that when residences are built in floodplains, that the required finished first floor elevation be established by in an AE zone, which is what we have here, by concrete foundation wall and hydrostatic flood vents, because a large part of that residence is extending beyond the 200 feet. I'm not asking that the applicant necessarily modify the grade modifications for the residents, but I still think that the applicant needs to scale back the extent of fill for the purposes of the accessory improvements. With regards to the drainage, technology that's being used. Again, as was mentioned, I had recommended that the applicant go with subsurface drainage chambers, which are more favorable for areas where you have high anticipated groundwater levels and where you have fluctuating, fluctuating water table, and where you have a potential for flooding, because as was touched upon, typically when you go with that drainage structure, you don't have to place as much fill as is needed when you go with conventional dry wells. Now, it's somewhat interesting that the applicant is offering that, that while they gave consideration to subsurface drainage chambers such as Coltech, and that's one of the manufacturers, as a possible means of reducing fill, that they were concerned that that might pose undue impacts on landscaping and the aesthetics of the property. What's interesting about that is if you look at the landscape plan, much of the area where the dry wells are being placed is being proposed as an open lawn area and a fire pit area. The trees are positioned away from that. So this area where the majority of dry wells in this portion of the property would be located, that's planned to be an open lawn area and a fire pit area. So I don't see that it creates significant issues as far as reed landscaping of that area. So it's almost appearing like one of the reasons why fill is yet proposed in this area is not just to try and go with the conventional dry wells for drainage purposes, but also to create a high elevated lawn in this area where a fire pit could be established, and there would be open lawn seating areas around that fire pit. It's somewhat interesting because if you look at the plan, it looks like there's already a fire pit that is proposed in the northerly portions of the pool patio. You see it on this plan with the seating around there. So it's hard for me to buy into the argument that they can entertain going with subsurface drainage structures or Coltech as a means of lessening the amount of fill because it's going to interfere with their landscaping concept. Now that we've become aware that this is an area that's going to be dedicated as an open lawn area with a fire pit. I noticed, and I think this was just an error on the plans. One of the plans, I believe it's a revegetation plan. I believe it's this plan here. It's actually this plan here. One of the plans is showing a fence line. This plan right here is showing a fence line that's appears to be proposed within the bounds of the easement. It may just be, and the reason I'm saying it appears to be a fence line is you have a straight line, and then you have crosses or X's along that line, which typically signifies that you're going to install a fence in that location. That fence line is not shown on the other plans, so I think that may have just been an error when the drawings were revised. That being said, any fence lines at the very least, would have to run along the landward boundary of the conservation easement, which again comes down here. I mean, the landowner is probably not going to want an angled fence line, so the fence line would more likely be linear and parallel to the improvements. I didn't have a good opportunity to look at all of the changes as far as the plantings, but I will assume that the landowner made the appropriate updates in terms of the current edge of clearing. Generally, the palette of plants that I'm seeing here looks good. You know, there's always an opportunity to work with the landowner if any tweaking is still needed as far as the revegetation plan. So I am yet not recommending any changes in the footprints or setbacks of the structures, even with the identification of the easement boundaries. The structures at their closest point are just about 125, 126 feet landward of the more recent wetland boundary that I flagged. So the structures are in conforming locations, but in summation, I think the plan still needs some additional work in terms of looking for opportunities to scale back the extent of fill, as I don't see the fill necessary for the purposes of construction of the pool and patio. And I think lesser fill can be used for the purposes of drainage. So that about covers the remaining areas of concern that I think the applicant yet needs to address. Thank you.
So, glaringly absent in Marty's conversation was any response whatsoever to really the only hydrologist who is an expert in the room, which is the Grosser report, which comes to the conclusion that there wouldn't be any impact on neighboring structures or the wetlands. So I don't think, given this record, you essentially have what you need in the record to deny this, let alone the fact that, as I've been consistently stated, I don't think your wetlands law allows you to regulate fill. What I find exceedingly frustrating is the fact that we have come to you demonstrating the significant fill that has been allowed by this board under the same law with anecdotal changes in circumstance of which none of them have been proven at all what would be required in a court of law, but yet there's no appreciation of it. I also don't appreciate statements like the house is very large, and I did say very verbally, so what? It's outside of your jurisdiction. I don't understand why the rhetorical reminded that the clients are building a house that conforms to zoning in terms of size, and it's outside. It's pushed way back. It meets all the standards. So really what we're talking about is fill here. And despite the fact that I feel very confident that you don't have the ability to regulate that, we've come back and we've significantly reduced. We started out with less fill than either one of the adjoining neighbors. We've given you expert testimony that says that that this is not going to have any impact on either the adjoining structures, which is helpful not only from a wetlands point of view, but from a FEMA point of view, and any impact on the wetlands. And that's what the science is in the report. The rest of Marty's comments they're not expert-based, they're anecdotal. And I don't understand why there hasn't been more of a candidly, more of an appreciation for the great lengths that this client has gone to allow the board to regulate something that I don't see that they have the authority to regulate. But means that way, we've tried to be accommodative. We've tried to reduce the amount of fill, and quite candidly, I'm at a loss. So I'd be more than happy to respond to any of the specific questions. Has the board read the grocery report? Does the board, or does Marty not agree with the grocery report? Can you tell me specific reasons why you don't agree with the grocery report? Can you give me any science that shows that the grocery report doesn't hold any sort of weight? You're just saying you don't like fill, and you're saying that it generally tends to have negative impacts on the wetlands, but it's not. These grocers did a very, very site-specific report on this, and you can't use generalized, what we would call generalized statements about the nature of fill generally to deny a permit. Where is the whole concept of working cooperatively to come to something that the applicant can live with and the board can live with? I've always known this board not to be sort of a winner takes all board. And I find myself, I pushed very hard on the client. Let's give something back to them. And here it's like, thanks for nothing. I really feel that way. Took a significant reduction in the amount of fill, which again, I don't think you have the ability to regulate. And I think your own pattern of approvals demonstrates that. You have to demonstrate there's been no change in the law. You have to demonstrate why something is different. You can't just talk about, climate change. That doesn't factor in the sort of very specific requirements that would be required to deny this permit. You can't just talk about fill generally. We have a site-specific report. We did the work. The client paid a lot of money to do this. Candidly, when we looked at some of the other models for fill on this property and the arrangement of structures, Grosser said, I can't give you a report like that. So we worked very hard to get to a point where the amount of fill was reduced so significantly that Grosser could give us that report. Where's the appreciation for that? You're essentially saying don't work with us. Because you know what? Marty's going to say, if there's a spoonful of fill on the property, that's too much. That doesn't work. It doesn't work with your own past conduct, your own past patterns. So I'm actually torn between just asking you to close it and make your decision, or if you can, I guess the other thought is if you have some other work to do, I'll go outside and talk to the client and see if that's what they want to do. And then we could come back and talk to you if you would give us that indulgence.
Just add something real quick.
Sure.
At the previous meeting and at this meeting, Marty has indicated that fill leads to increased slopes, and that slopes are the thing that could potentially result in an increased potential for nitrogen from the sloped areas in the lawn and the upland to get into the wetlands and into the groundwater. However, I kind of thought that was the purpose of requiring a 100-foot wetlands buffer, was so that the fertilizers from the upland, from the areas past the 100-foot setback, had a place to filter through before getting to the wetlands and the surface waters. And I understand that there are changes that are happening in the environment, but based on the current iteration of the code, which is what we are being held to, I kind of disagree that those slopes are negative here, because we are providing the buffer that we're supposed to be requiring to do. Again, all of these structures that are being proposed, all of this landscaping, everything meets the recommended setbacks of Chapter 325. So we'd hope that you take that under consideration. I also just want to note that correlation does not mean causation, that just because we're showing a fire pit over an area of lawn doesn't mean that that is the reason why we are doing it. It's more that, oh, there was an area that we could put it there. Meanwhile, we also have 3 tupelo trees that are being proposed that we wouldn't be able to have there if we were proposing a large expanse of Coltech drainage structures. So there's some give and take that has to be done. And in this case, okay, we had some dry wells there. So yes, we wound up using that space because we were able to use that space. But again, that fire pit, more than 125 feet away from wetlands. So that's what we have. So I just wanted to note that. Thank you.
So if I can, with your indulgence, I don't know if you have other work. I'm sorry, I apologize. I don't know if you have other work to do. I'd like to be able to spend 5 minutes with my client, in which case we'll either see if there's something else we can do, which I don't think the client should have to, candidly, or we'll just ask you to close it and make a decision. Can we have that indulgence for 5 minutes? And if you have other things to do on your calendar?
I want to mention a couple of things first. It should be impeccably clear that we are appreciative of any progress we make. We asked you to do some things, and you've gone down that path. We'd be remiss not saying thank you for doing that.
Thank you.
This is a discussion, and this is the process. We work together to figure things out.
That's been my experience
So-
with this
So
board.
that's what we're doing now.
Yep.
We're in the middle of that process.
Yep.
We're in that process.
That's been my experience with this board, and I thank you.
But just to answer your legal question as to our authority to regulate fill, if you read chapter 325(6), regulated activities in areas, it shall be unlawful to engage in any of the following activities in a wetland area or within 200 feet of wetland boundary without a permit or administrative wetlands permit pursuant to this chapter. And then it lists several things. Number 1 is place or deposit, or permit to be placed or deposited, any debris, fill, land, sand, gravel, or other material.
Well, what I'm saying is when you meet the setbacks in the code, you have to take that into account. You have structural setbacks. There's a reason why there are established setbacks. I know what you're saying. That's a catch-all.
But the point is, I was saying it, I didn't interrupt you.
Sorry. You're right, Harry. I apologize. I'm sorry.
That is the legal authority we have for regulating fill. How
Respectfully
much?
disagree.
That's what the discussion's about.
Okay. Well, I would just say I respectfully disagree that that gives you the authority to regulate fill within your entire jurisdiction. And that's based upon the way you
Black and white.
acted in the past. But that's
Black and white.
No, nothing's black and white. Trust me. That's why you have established.
That's why you're a
the
good attorney.
legislature
There's
established
no black
setbacks.
and white. Anyway, that also doesn't say no fill shall be placed. It says no fill shall be placed without a permit.
Yep.
We're
That's
working
true
on
as
getting
well.
a permit for you to put some fill there. So we're in that process.
Yep.
Also interested, anybody else has anything to say, you can certainly chime in. There's that area around, that Marty has suggested around the fire pit, the accessory structure, the pool house. It may be appropriate to take 5 minutes, have a quick discussion, come back and see what it looks like. We don't have any numbers here. I actually think it would be good to close this. We're so close. But we want to make sure everybody's on the same page and not have an oops later on.
I understand. Is there if you could repeat it again, Harry, because it's always very wise, your direction.
There's an area that Marty mentioned around the fire pit, or the fire pit area, under the fire pit, and either under or around or both the pool house, where fill is, and I guess perhaps around the pool, but those are the areas. Take 5 minutes with your client and people can push those numbers and see if something can work there, and then come back and we can, what's the process here? Can we,
Do I have a motion to table it for?
John, you used to be town attorney. What do? Do you table this?
No.
Or do we just hold off?
Just adjourn it.
Go get a
for
drink of
second,
water?
Go out and talk, we'll come back.
Okay,
Yeah, that's all. I mean, you're adjourning it until we come back, that's all.
okay.
Tabling it has a very specific meaning.
No, we're not. We're just giving you the opportunity to talk.
Well, then, do we talk about something else, or do we just
That's
wait?
what I was suggesting. I don't want to take up your time if we're asking you to indulge us in being able to talk about this.
5 minutes isn't gonna be a
No
big deal.
matter how much time.
minutes.
And we'll just sit here quiet.
Let's go.
Go, Tom.
I think Corinna,
Yeah. This one? Yeah.
Oh, I want to open it to the public. You want to speak?
Yeah.
Let's
Why don't we
wait a
wait on
minute.
Yeah,
Sure, might affect your conversations.
Let's
together
you
later.
speak then.
I'm Marcia Michon. I'm actually directly across from this house on the Sagaponack side. I've been there for over 30 years. It's a beautiful space. I understand this is a complicated process for you guys, been through this, and we count on you guys to make sure you protect the environment and our investment in our homes and the landscape and the pond and the wildlife. It's a very rich area. I don't know, can I show you pictures? I don't know, have you all been there? Have you seen what we're
Anything you
talking?
submit has to stay with the record, so you can't really submit.
Oh, because I had emailed that last week and, okay. Anyway, so I won't show it. So it's a very narrow part of Sag Pond, what we're talking about. So the two houses next to them and our property across from them is where the pond narrows. So from the ocean, it's wide, you have Bridge Lane, then it gets very narrow and it opens up wider, you know, like going past Foster Farm. So it's a very narrow strip of waterway. It's very sensitive. It has changed a lot over the 30-something years. I've had to put more dry wells in fact, 8 of them, 400 and 500 feet beyond the wetland area. So it's a good thing you moved those dry wells. They would have been useless. It's clay and when...
Yeah, you have to speak to us.
Okay, well, thank you. I've never done this before, so. So, what?
Now you know.
Thank you. Where was I now before you interrupted me?
You had to place extra dry wells.
Oh, yeah. So if you had those dry wells along in the wetland area or even 200 feet back, they'd be useless because it's very clay, the soil there. And lately we've been getting these like flash torrential rains and the land can't dry it up fast enough. So your dry wells are just filled up and until the land can drain off of the groundwater, it just sits there and you flood. So all these measurements that were done years ago, how far back you need to be to protect the waterway or your property or your basement, really haven't caught up with where we are. I think it's a beautiful place to build a house. I think you have to be very careful about the water, the fill. I don't know all that much about it, but it's your guys' job to make sure that the waterway and Sag Pond is protected and that the homeowners moving in, despite what our architects and people say, that their house doesn't flood, that things are going to work well, and things have changed. We've had blue algae a lot from runoff a couple of times, and I don't know if anyone knows what blue algae is, but it's poisonous to dogs. It's very toxic. You can walk across, I can walk across to where their property is from my property. We're directly across, and the water at best is up to here, at best. So it's very shallow. It's very sensitive water. It's been filling in a lot. I'm not sure Marty will ever give the pond approval to dredge it a bit, but it is in a very sensitive stage. I think Cornell and the Pecanic Land Trust are trying to get homeowners around the pond to do filtering, to see what we can do to help the pond. And if that pond dies, there goes the real estate value for everyone on that, right? There have been some ponds out here in Southampton that have died and get very smelly. So I think I know neighbors on both their sides. I know all the neighbors on my side. I think it's great they want to build a home. I think it's important that you guys work together and you make sure it's safe for them and it's safe for the pond and their neighbors. And that's all I wanted to say.
Thank you.
And I appreciate everyone being here presenting.
Thank you.
online.
There are also copies of her email, if you want to see the photos, there are copies. They're in the file.
Oh, okay.
The big file?
So this is being recorded for the record. So is this just a pregnant pause or to delete something? Some time here.
Still being recorded.
Okay. So this could be boring for somebody listening. Does somebody want to tell some jokes?
We're being recorded.
Not a good time to tell jokes.
Was there anybody on Zoom that wanted to speak? Maybe too late since they stepped out, but.
Yeah.
Ryan, who I believe was mentioned before, is on Zoom here, but hasn't said anything.
Yeah, I didn't see him sign up.
I'll be right back.
This is the platform that was mentioned in Marty's report, I think.
Uh-huh.
It's been up and down Highland Terrace a zillion times, but not since these guys.
Okay, so you know this area quite well.
I mean, bike there.
Yeah.
There was only, he had mentioned Brian was on if you had any questions.
But we weren't here last week, so then you have to ask for them.
Ask for Kelly to donate her vacation time to attend our meeting.
See, they all come here. So like we have a mailbox and they go into the mailbox and you see it. So we
They
get
don't
it
get
at the
forwarded.
meeting.
They don't get forwarded to us.
And not this, the preliminary reports, Joe.
That those I read. Yeah.
Yeah, that'll come,
Okay, so this we read
Yeah.
in real time.
right.
Fires in New Jersey. Air quality stuff.
That's a good question.
Does it say something about the fence here?
Replacing the fence all along the property close to the shoreline.
Yeah, okay, you gotta speak to that.
I'm just curious. It is Marty's right, but it's an error.
Yeah, there you go.
That's Leslie's last name. Schultz.
This one here. This is where the fence is.
That's not from the,
So much. Yeah, there's a number of emails, all basically the same objections.
Do people usually come to the office to read these before the meetings, or you just look at them after?
I just look at them.
Interesting. This was the one I looked at.
How substantial is the decrease? I was in the last meeting.
Less than 40% decrease was 1,300 and change, and there's initially within our jurisdiction down to 9.
Does that seem enough to you? Okay. Bennett's attitude is just, his whole demeanor really pushes my buttons. I have to restrain myself. He's just, so obnoxious. It's repetitive. I know. I was so glad you did that. That was good. What about the other system for the drainage? How strong do you feel about that?
I intend with Marty to go. Sand motion to make ice measuring Hurricane Sandy. May is not as much as we just pushed down.
Is there any little things that just Bennett, just for the purpose of putting them in his place? We have to give it.
Harry, did you get a chance to read these letters?
Yeah.
Go back to the file. Does have quite a manner. The lawyer really does have quite a manner. When he said that.
Should we speak?
We're all
Been
here, the
recording the
tape
whole
is
time.
running, so.
Chris is going to be much better at describing what
Second
we're
thing,
going to
okay.
what we're going to say to you. But we had some conversations, and we think we can do a little bit of a reduction. But I'm going to have Chris describe it to you, because not only will he describe the area, but it'll describe what the net reduction that'll be.
Great, thanks, John. Okay, so look at the plan. The area that Marty was focused on was the fire pit is. And so what we just decided is that we can take this whole area, push it down, and lower the grade here. And we'll lower it a foot, and that'll result in 103 cubic yards of fill reduction.
133.
133 cubic yards. We'll take these dry wells in this area that's,
You figured out all those numbers right out there?
what's 60 by 60?
That's what he's
Right.
professional.
That's why I had him calculate it.
So that's the reduction. And the dry wells that are indicated here, they're forward of the wetland line. We will do cold tech in this area. Okay, we'll do this area with that. It is open. They might want to add more trees, but we want to get this approved. So we will compromise and push this down, say another 133 cubic yards.
That brings it down to a total of 821
So is that
cubic yards.
agree with that?
We started at
Yeah, I think that's doable.
It was a very productive 10 minutes.
Wait, one
You
of-
want to offer additional comment, or you're finished with your?
my comment is we're going to take out some more fill to hopefully make everybody happy. That's all.
You want to say something more?
Open up public to
let's see.
What about the fence? There was some mention there
Yes.
was a fence.
Yes.
That does concern me.
On the survey, on the plan, either plan or the survey,
It's pool fence.
there's a fence within the buffer.
Yeah.
It's within the easement.
It's a fence actually that shows on one of the plans within the easement boundaries. I assume that's gonna be
Well, if it's
relocated.
in the easement boundary, we'll
Yeah.
get it out of the easement. I have no
Yeah, it
option.
can't be in the easement. Yeah,
there's not- I'm not
okay.
gonna argue
All right,
that.
so that's
We'll
resolved.
get it out of the easement area.
Okay.
Yes. I can't argue that.
Okay.
That's why it's an easement.
Okay, so you've heard the testimony is before us. We're going to drop another 133 yards of fill. We're going to move the fence out of the easement area. Any other questions, any other comments? And
Change the
is anybody
drainage
on Zoom, is
system.
that correct, Peter?
What?
They're gonna change the drainage
Yes.
system in that area.
They're going to drop
Say that
the,
again, Harry.
is there anybody on Zoom that wants to speak?
They're both up there now if they want to.
Okay, I was thinking of somebody from the public.
Nobody.
They're part of our group here. So they're gonna drop the grade 1 foot, and that calculates to be 133.
In that area.
In that area.
Yeah,
And-
yeah. Are you okay with it?
Yes.
Shall we close?
Yeah, I mean, if you guys are happy with that, we're happy.
Yeah.
Make a motion to close public hearing.
Second.
But you got, is it, what I heard was the sense of the board that that was all fine.
Yes.
Somebody will say that affirmatively?
Yes, yes.
You'll find out when we vote next time.
Thank you.
So, Maury, do you have
Revised plans.
a picture of where that is?
Yes, I do.
Okay,
We'll get a revised plan too.
okay. So we'll get the fence out of there, drop the level a foot, and
Coltech.
the Coltech in
In
that
that area.
area.
In that area.
Okay.
I made a motion.
We have to take a vote.
It's been moved to
Nobody,
second.
nobody seconded my motion yet.
Okay, we got a second.
I'm waiting.
All in
I've
favor?
been waiting for 2 minutes now.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks for the back and forth. I appreciate it. Thank you. Thank you for being questions.
Say all in favor, aye. Keeping yours. Thank you, Chris.
Thank you all.
Thank you very much.
Thank
Good
you.
night.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Advisory reports, North Sea Park. No, you can stay, but just don't
You
talk.
don't have to go home, but you can't stay here.
Marty Shea, Chief Environmental Analyst for the town. So,
Now,
do you
first
announce
time
first advisory?
papers.
Advisory, yes, North Sea Park.
Oh, okay.
Advisory, this is minutes.
It's a monopole that would be 140 feet high,
This is
whose
the first one, these are the comments.
installation is proposed at the North Sea landfill. And
Maybe one
the,
more. Yeah, that's
as far as recreational property close to Mage's Path. There are two recommended advisory comments. The first indicates that the aesthetic effects of the proposed 140 feet tall monopole on area view sheds would be somewhat lessened by the proximate North Sea landfill and the high forested terrain to the east and south, whose heights and terrain exceed 150 feet. Second, notwithstanding the above, it may be beneficial to consider visibility and visual contrast created by the monopole by providing a simulation or rendering of how the project would be viewed from Fish Cove at the Newark Road Bridge, as well as from the Conscience Point Historic Site.
Motion to send those comments to the planning board.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? 80 Anchor Street.
This is a planned two-lot residential subdivision for a small tract that contains an existing dwelling. There are two recommended advisory comments. The first is that based upon an Environment Division field assessment completed on Friday, March 28, 2025, the tract is marked by pine barrens, which, notwithstanding the forest fragmentation, have important value in terms of native biodiversity, aquifer recharge, carbon sequestration, air purification, and wildlife habitat. And second, as the parcel is located within the Aquifer Protection Overlay District, the existing and proposed clearance footprints, as well as current and planned site disturbance calculations as expressed in square footage and percent lot area, need to be added to the subdivision map.
Motion to send those comments to the planning board.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Hanger Charlie.
It's a subdivision, it's in its pre-application stage for quite a large, naturally vegetated tract in Queog. There are several recommended advisory comments. The first indicates that based upon an Environment Division assessment completed on Monday, April 14, 2025, the tract is marked by historically cleared and mined lands, which have naturally succeeded to mix woodland, shrubland, and grassland with some noteworthy areas of invasive Japanese knotweed and non-wetland Phragmites stands. Second, notwithstanding the site disturbance, the affected lands have important values in terms of biodiversity, aquifer recharge, carbon sequestration, air purification, and wildlife habitat. Thirdly, in light of these public benefits, clearance limits should be adhered to on the proposed residential lots, and they should be modeled after the site disturbance limitations that are set forth in section 330-67, which is protection of natural vegetation. And lastly, the comment indicates that the Conservation Board is supportive of the planned residential development pre-application map for the hangar situate Queog as prepared by Vince Scordiello, dated February 24, 2025, as the proposed clustered open space builds upon and provides an essential habitat linkage with the budding easterly forest, inclusive of town preserved lands, property owned by the West Hampton Beach Village, where natural buffers are currently being proposed, expansive woods held by the Suffolk County Water Authority and the Quogue Wildlife Refuge, and extensive county-owned forest.
Motion to send those comments to the planning board.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? We have a 292-39B and 325-9E referral, the Milan subdivision.
So there is a draft planning board resolution of approval before you for properties at 10 and 12 Red Creek Road, which proposes conditions to be placed on the map to ensure that the map is compatible with Chapter 325 and the town's wetland protection standards. So this is a resolution of approval It indicates that whereas draft conditions of final approval relating to wetland preservation for the subdivision of property of Milan were referred by the Planning Board April 2nd, 2025 to the Conservation Board pursuant to sections 292-39B and section 325-9 subsection E of the Town Code, which is preservation and protection of natural environment, for a resolution approving, denying, or modifying such conditions. And whereas the Conservation Board has found such conditions to be in accordance with the intent and provisions of Chapter 325, now therefore be it resolved that the Conservation Board hereby approves the draft conditions final approval for the subdivision of Milan, which were referred by the Planning Board to the Conservation Board on April 2nd, 2025. And just for this board's information, we had previously received an advisory referral from the Planning Board regarding this map. We had made recommendations, and the Planning Board has chosen to integrate all of the recommendations of this board into the map approval.
Motion to approve the draft conditions of the final approval for the subdivision of Milan.
Second.
Resolved that the Conservation Board hereby approves the draft conditions of final approval for the subdivision of Milan, which were referred by the Planning Board to the Conservation Board on April 2nd, 2025. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? For the ZBA, Tyler Eddy.
So this pending variance application relates to residentially developed property on Flying Point Road in the hamlet of Watermill. The property does have a history of wetland permit approvals. There are two comments that are being offered. The first indicates that the survey as prepared by Gary Benz with a latest revision date of February 28, 2025, which was filed with the pending area variance application, is generally consistent with the project plans, which were conditionally approved by the Conservation Board by resolution dated August 14, 2024. The requisite wetland permit has not yet been issued, as we are waiting formal submission of the final revised survey. And second, there are no significant environmental concerns regarding the planned residential additions, a swimming pool, spa, pergola, and outdoor shower, for which dimensional setback relief is currently being sought, as the wetland impacts of the planned construction would be sufficiently mitigated by IA OWTS installation, native landscaping, and reclamation of both covenanted wetland preservation area, naturally vegetated wetland, non-disturbance, non-fertilization buffer.
Motion to send those comments to the zoning board.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Denise Sucklich.
This application relates to a waterfront property at Cold Spring Point. The property had received a conditional approval, well, actually a permit from this board for the purposes of redevelopment, and that redevelopment plan does need area variances from the zoning board. So the comments confirm that, as noted by the applicant, planned construction of new residence, detached garage, accessory building, and swimming pool, for which area variances and pure mid-law relief is being sought, have already been authorized pursuant to Conservation Board Wetland Permit Number CB 24003, and that permit was issued on November 3rd, 2023. The second comment confirms that the survey is prepared by Robert A. Smith, dated July 6, 2020, with a latest revision date of January 27, 2025. which was filed with the pending variance application, is consistent with the survey as prepared by Robert A. Smith with a last revision date of September 26, 2023, which was supported by the Conservation Board pursuant to such wetland permit. And lastly, the comment that's being offered indicates that the wetland impacts resulting from the construction would be mitigated by establishment of restored wetland preservation area, naturally vegetated wetland non-disturbance, non-fertilization buffer, as depicted on the applicant's survey.
Motion to send those comments to the zoning board.
Second.
All in favor? Opposed? Lynn Leahy.
This is a pending area variance application before the Zoning Board of Appeals for a property that received redevelopment approvals from this board. A property is in the private community of Shinnecock Shores, and it's marked by a bulkheaded shorefront along a dug canal. The first comment indicates that the survey is prepared by Jeffrey Hader, dated October 4, 2021, last revised April 2nd, 2025, which was filed with the pending area variance application, is generally consistent with the survey, as prepared by Jeff Hader with a latest revision date of that needs to be corrected, the actual revision date. The requisite wetland permit has not yet been issued, as we are awaiting submission of the requisite draft covenant establishing a naturally vegetated wetland non-disturbance, non-fertilization buffer land without the bulkhead. The second comment indicates the wetland impacts resulting from the proposed new residence additions for which pyramid law relief is being sought would be sufficiently mitigated by IA, OWTS installation, native landscaping, and reclamation of the required wetland buffer.
Motion to send those comments to the zoning board.
Second.
All in favor? Opposed? Vasilios Sorlanis Trust and Janet Sorlanis Trust.
This is an application that relates to residentially developed property that's bulkheaded on the south side of Montauk Highway. The property has frontage on Shinnecock Bay. First comment indicates that the residential swimming pool for which a variance application has been filed is located greater than 50 feet landward of surface waters, where at least 100 linear feet of functional bulkhead exists. Therefore, a town wetland permit was not required in order to build the pool. Accordingly, a letter of wetland non-jurisdiction was issued for the pool on December 13, 2023. And second, the required wetland non-disturbance, non-fertilization buffer as established pursuant to the covenant recorded with the Suffolk County Clerk on July 15, 2013, listed under Library D 000-12736, page 533, needs to be depicted on the survey. And of course, that covenanted buffer was a condition of a wetland permit that was issued for activities within 50 feet. It was a separate action.
Motion to send those comments to the zoning board.
Second.
All in favor? Opposed? The administrative wetland permits are in your packets. Resolution of conditional approval, A024022, Adam Spinner. Any discussion?
Move to issue.
Second.
Resolved that a conditional wetland permit approval be granted to Adam Spinner for the proposed project on the terms and conditions set forth therein. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? A024046, 24 Holly Lane LLC. Any discussion?
Move to issue. Second.
Resolved that a conditional wetland Granted to 24 Holly Lane LLC for the proposed project by the terms and conditions as forth therein. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? A 024070, Joseph Cerami. Any discussion?
Move the issue.
Second?
Resolve that a conditional wetland permit approval granted to Joseph Cerami and Jane Keogh for the proposed project in the terms and conditions set forth therein. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Preliminary review, secret determination, A 023022, Jerome Savadier.
This application relates to existing residentially developed property on the north side of Brooklyn Road in the hamlet of Noack. There is a preliminary advisory report on file that dates back to May 30th, 2023. This is a property where the existing dwelling and pool and deck area sits at significantly higher elevation than the remainder of the property. The terrain, starting at the northerly deck, drops down rather quickly to a flooded red maple and shrub swamp. The applicant had purchased property in recent years, and upon purchase found that the prior owner had completed a host of improvements at the property that were not consistent with a very old wetland permit that was issued by this board under a prior wetland law entitled Chapter 68. The applicant had also found that the naturally vegetated buffer that was required as a condition of that former permit was never formally established at the property. So when the new owners became aware that there were quite a number of outstanding issues that needed to be addressed at the property, they made this application initially just to legalize all the existing improvements, recognizing that there would be a need to reestablish naturally vegetated buffers. I had, as part of my preliminary advisory report, offered a sketch to the applicant showing, based upon the history of this property and the current site conditions and the nature of the wetlands and the terrain, what I thought was appropriate in terms of preservation and restoration to natural vegetation. The applicant had initially gone forward with having a landscape architect, actually with having several landscape architects develop native planting plans for my consideration, consistent with my sketch, but then had indicated to me that they were thinking of undertaking some additional improvements. So I recommended that Conservation Board review the application be postponed until they could come forward with a drawing showing any additional improvements that they now wanted to make to the property, so that could be integrated into the same application. Took some time for them finally to come back to me, but when they did, I found that they wanted to extend some of the existing deck. The existing vinyl pool is failing, so they want to rebuild the pool. It would be just a little bit closer to the wetlands, and the additional deck area would be aligned with the existing elevated deck at the property. Upon consideration of that drawing and a reassessment of site conditions, I offered a slightly modified sketch for buffer establishment, which pretty much maximizes the buffer throughout the property, but gives them a little bit additional lawn area to the north of the house and deck and pool. And the applicant has agreed to that mitigation plan. As a consequence, we now have sufficient information to make a determination on the application. Accordingly, I'm recommending that the hearing requirement be waived.
Motion to waive the public hearing?
Resolved that the Town Conservation Board hereby waives the public hearing requirement pursuant to Chapter 325, Section 325-8 of the Town Code. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? A 024057, Gregory Robbins and Linda Robbins.
This is the Robbins application, are we on?
Yes, Robbins.
The Robbins application relates to an existing residentially developed property as you can see on the aerial photograph, has a natural beach along the little Peconic Bay. There is a preliminary advisory report on file dated April 17, 2025. The applicant is looking to get this board's approval to construct a rock revetment along the shoreline, which I see as unnecessary and raises a host of environmental concerns. I had impressed upon the applicant that as required by the permit issuance standards in Chapter 325, that they would need to come forward with a practicable alternatives analysis, which they have agreed to do. But because significant information is needed in order to make a determination on this application, I'm recommending that a public hearing be held.
Motion to schedule a public hearing for May 28th, 2025.
Second.
Resolved that the Town Conservation Board hereby schedules the public hearing for May 28, 2025, and that a notice of public hearing be published in the Town newspaper pursuant to Chapter 325, Section 325-8C of the Town Code. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? A 024072, Sergio Hierro.
This is an application that took a while to come in, partly because the property had changed ownership. There is a preliminary advisory report on file dated April 14, 2025. As you can see on the aerial, this is a bulkheaded, residentially developed property. The large white area that you're seeing is an unauthorized concrete slab or concrete patio that was built at the property. Under the former ownership, the basement had been converted to living area, and it was below the minimum required finished first floor elevation as per FEMA. So the prior owner had been cited, and initially the owner wanted to appeal the FEMA designation of that area, and also seek relief from this board and the Zoning Board of Appeals. But finally, rather than coming with the application, they sold the application, and the new owner commenced the process of removing the living quarters in the finished basement. However, when the property sold, the new owner not only found that a lot of work had been done on the property without proper permits, inclusive of various patios, decks, etc., but also wanted to significantly change the aesthetics and look of the existing waterfront residence. So they made that application and worked with me to revise their plans. Part of their plans include complete removal of the concrete slab or patio. They also are removing significant deck and patio coverage for the landward on the property. They're also changing the entry two-level patio areas as well. In the end, as part of a review of this application, I made additional recommendations for modifications to the improvements and to the drawings and survey. And I also provided a sketch showing what I felt would be appropriate in terms of establishment of a restored naturally vegetated buffer on the property. The applicant was also seeking to bring in fill to alleviate flooding on the property. I recommended that those fill plans be abandoned. The applicant has since agreed to all of the recommended mitigation for the site. So we do have an excellent plan for the site, and we do have sufficient information to make a determination. Accordingly, I'm recommending that the public hearing requirement be waived.
Motion to waive the public hearing.
Second.
Resolved that the Town Conservation Board hereby waives the public hearing requirement pursuant to Chapter 325, Section 325-80 of the Town Code. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? A024075, Camp 15 LLC.
This is a property that's located on the south side of Bayview Road in the hamlet of Remsburg, Spionk. There is a preliminary advisory report filed dated April 16, 2025. As you can see, the property fronts on a dug tidal canal that flows out into Moriches Bay. The abutting property on the west was acquired and preserved by the town. Virtually the entirety of that property is wetlands. So the existing residence has wetlands on the west side and on the south side. The dwelling is quite high, and that was it was built that way many years ago because the property is very low-lying and very vulnerable to flooding. As indicated by the advisory report, the family had received the conditional approval from this board many years ago to build some upper second level decks jutting out on the west side, south side, and east side of the existing home. That approval was conditioned upon coming forward with a draft covenant to establish a covenanted wetland preservation area and restore naturally vegetated buffer. The family had come forward with native planting plan, but they never came forward with the covenant. This property has been in non-compliance with that prior Conservation Board approval for many years. Well, many years have passed, and those decks, which were authorized but were intended to be mitigated by restored covenanted buffers, were built, and now they're deteriorated and are failing and need to be replaced. So the applicant has come forward with a deck replacement plan that enlarges those decks a bit. There is a shed that for the longest time has been sitting in Phragmites marsh. I recommended that that shed be removed, which the applicant has agreed to. I also shared with the applicant a plan with regards to what I thought would be appropriate in terms of establishment of restored buffers and wetlands protection on the property. And the property lends itself well to that because The property, as mentioned, is often flooded. So although the landowners have tried to establish and maintain lawn, the lawn is in miserable shape on this property because it's always wet. So the applicant is amenable to the concept of trying to maximize naturally vegetated buffers on this property. They came back with an alternate sketch just to give them a little bit of additional access room around the corners of the house, which is fine. I also mentioned, doesn't necessarily jump out at you on this aerial, but right now there are two cut access paths to the water. I indicated that had to be, one of them had to be restored, as we typically only allow one access way to the water through covenanted areas, which they've agreed to. I also found a discharge pipe with a black hose going into the canal in the far southeast corner of the property. I don't know what the origin of that pipe is. The applicant is looking at that and has indicated that whatever that turns out to be, that pipe will be abandoned, and if it means that drainage needs to be installed, that will be done as part of this plan as well. So this is an application for which we have sufficient information to make a determination. As such, I'm recommending that the hearing requirement be waived.
Motion to waive the public hearing. Second.
Resolved that the Town Conservation Board hereby waives the public hearing requirement pursuant to Chapter 325, Section 325-80 of the Town Code. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? And lastly, today is the day that in this country we celebrate Administrative Assistance Day. Be remiss if we didn't recognize your work, Karina, as support staff. We appreciate what you do and how you do it. We do have an ethics board, an ethics law that requires us to not give too much, so in light of that, we didn't give you anything. I will say heartfelt thanks for what you do. There you go.
Well, then I violated the law because I had bought a bouquet of tulips, so.
Is there anything else to come before this board?
Motion to adjourn.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
So